Since poker is a game of figuring out what everyone else is doing at the table, adjusting to them, and then taking optimal lines accordingly, it only makes sense to think about how various opponents might view you as well. Remaining mindful of what you are representing during the course of a hand is the key to choosing the best course of action. Put another way, you must always view how any action you take will be viewed by your opponents. In this video, I will cover how to use the concept of representing to help you start playing every poker hand better. The concept of representing is perhaps the most important fundamental concept relating to strong post-flop poker, especially when playing against thinking players. It governs everything you do. What action to take as well as your bet sizing are both influenced by the hand that you are attempting to represent. Everything you do must tell a story as you attempt to maximize your long-term expected value for each and every situation you face. To put it in simple terms, generally when you are value betting, you want your hand to look like a bluff, so it's more likely to get called. And when you are bluffing, you want your hand to appear as if it's for value, so that you achieve more folds. I feel this basic concept is where a lot of players miss the boat, and really it's what separates the very good players from everyone else. The two key areas of your game that you need to be most aware of what you are representing is how you size your bets and what lines you take with particular holdings. For instance, when considering a bluff, if you cannot credibly represent a strong hand with your perceived range on a particular board, then it is probably not a good idea to attempt that bluff. Let's take a look at an example. We open ace-10 offsuit on the button and get called by a taggish reg, likely a level 2 player, possibly level 3. We get a really good flop to think about barreling off on. If called, we can barrel just about any turn cards, since we can still represent any flush card or overcard on the river. We can also pick up equity on the turn with any 7, 9, or spade, and our ace and 10 is likely live as well. So, our play is to set up a river shove if any spade, 10, jack, queen, king, or ace hits by the river. However, we get an 8 of diamonds. Notoriously, non-draw completing paired rivers are about the worst cards possible to bluff, since it generally polarizes our range at that point. Therefore, the hero checks back and saves the rest of his stack, since it is highly likely that the villain would have called with just about any holding he would have called the flop and turn with. And we can discount him having a draw himself, since those hands would probably have raised the flop a lot of the time. This is why you don't want to slow play when you have a big hand in these spots either. To maximize value with a very strong hand, then you want to try and get into the mind of your opponent and figure out what he would perceive a bluff to look like. The key factor to remember is that most players think other players think like they do. In other words, when a player is attempting to decipher what you are doing, they base their decisions on their own thought processes. Therefore, we should base our decisions on how an opponent thinks we will react based on how they would play in a similar situation. Most players deduce our thought process by using their own thought process. This is why good note-taking is important. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. We open a pair of 5s under the gun and get called by the small blind. We bet small on the flop to get value from worse and decide to bet the turn as well to set up our price for showdown, and possibly set up a potential bluff later on occasionally. Once again, we get one of these polarized river spots. Versus a good player, this is a great spot to overbet, since he may view our shove as a busted draw or something else. However, a smaller bet might be better against weaker players who are not that good at hand reading, since worse opponents or weak opponents might only play the hand this way with a very strong hand. Therefore, we want to give them a good price to call with whatever weak holding they might have. A 1/3 to just under 1/2 pot size bet looks like it might maximize in that scenario against that type of player. So this type of logic can be applied to just about any scenario. As you continue to play and learn about the various player types, try to think about how each one of them would react in different scenarios, both pre-flop and post-flop. Once you gain a feel for how these players think, then adjusting to them will become much easier. Through good note-taking and labeling, we can make more precise adjustments in the heat of battle. If you want to learn more about how different players think, check out my video on the levels of poker thinking, linked in the description and above. Thanks for watching.